Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us. So I think you have a few kind of slides and messages to share with us before we move to student Q&A, if that's okay.
Yeah. I'll jump into it. So, morning everyone. Great to be here. Thanks for coming. I wanted to share a couple of things. One, I'll just talk a bit about my career journey and the things I've done. But then I wanted to talk mainly about some of the things that we do within TikTok to make the product of TikTok, and also to do some of the marketing and messaging around TikTok, which I've been very involved with. And I want to just use those two things just to explain some of the teams and different kinds of people and different kind of skills that exist within a company like TikTok, because people often ask me, like, how do I work at a company like TikTok? What kind of jobs can I do? So I want to just try and explain some of the different jobs that are going on across teams to make things happen. But to start with, just a little bit on me. So I am currently the general manager for TikTok in Europe. I have been at TikTok since nearly a year, since August last year. And prior to that, I was at YouTube, and I was there for a long time, 9 years, leading the marketing for YouTube across Europe and the Middle East and Africa. And prior to that, I worked in television for a few years. Prior to all of that, I studied languages at university. So I didn't really, certainly not at university, didn't really have a clear sense of what I wanted to do. I enjoyed languages, thought that would be a kind of good degree to do, and actually it was a brilliant degree to do, not least because I spent some time abroad as part of that, spent some time in France, and that was really enjoyable. But when I got to the end of my degree, I obviously had to start thinking, like, what kind of job do I want to do? And I basically came to thinking that I wanted to work in kind of advertising, communications, marketing, because I was interested in the combination of creativity, kind of communication, understanding how people think, understanding how you can try and make a message interesting, so that it would be noticed by lots of people. So I got into advertising and marketing, and then did a few different jobs, and then, as I say, got into television, worked at ITV, and then from there went to YouTube, and then from there TikTok. So I think probably lots of people will say this, but often careers sort of make sense when you look at them backwards, whereas when you're going forwards, you haven't quite planned the whole thing out, and I certainly hadn't really planned the whole thing out, but it kind of makes sense now, how, having been interested in communication, creativity, and those kinds of things, how I would sort of move from advertising and marketing into, I guess, media with television and then other things. So that's a little bit on me. I think TikTok, you probably don't need me to tell you too much about TikTok. I'm guessing this audience probably knows a little bit what TikTok's about, but maybe if I just talk a bit about how we think of ourselves as a company and what we're trying to do. And lots of companies have kind of mission statements and things to try and define, like, what we're actually trying to do, what that company is actually trying to do. And for TikTok, we talk about wanting to do two things, which is that we want to inspire people's creativity, and we want to bring people joy, basically be fun. So we want to be about creativity, and we want to be about joy and fun. And just for a bit of fun, I thought I'd play a couple of these videos that I think are quite nice examples of the type of creativity and the type of fun that exists on TikTok that is slightly different to on other platforms. So let's just start with this one, which is from a brilliant creator called Jeremy Lynch, using some of the very cool editing and transition tools that we provide on TikTok. Oh. So the thing I love about TikTok is it just blows you away every single day what people, creators and users do with the tools we give them. So this is another cool example from the lockdown period when everyone was stuck at home of a brilliant creator, again just using some effects very cleverly. This is actually, it's also another thing that people sometimes say to me or ask me is, do you have to watch a lot of TikToks? And the answer is yes. I mean, you definitely do need to use TikTok, use the product a lot, really understand how it works, really understand how people are using it, what's good and bad about it. So it's definitely an important part of my job and everyone's jobs is to actually use TikTok a lot and really understand what's going on. So I talked about creativity and we also talked about just fun and joy, and there's so many examples of that on TikTok, but this is a really small example, but just made me laugh.
When people say, just brush your naturally curly hair, just brush it. Okay, sis, now what? Like, what's next, Tiffany, huh? What do I do now?
So that's what we're about, inspiring people's creativity and, bringing them joy, making them laugh. The actual product itself, you're probably pretty familiar. There's two really main central parts to it, which is the For You feed. On the left, that's the first thing you see when you open TikTok, and that is the feed of videos that you swipe through, and that feed is personalized for you according to the things that you have liked or shared or commented on or enjoyed. So there's a whole, it's called an algorithm, which is a whole, effectively a mathematical formula behind that, which understands how certain videos are likely to be, how much you're likely to like them or not, and it does that for every individual user. So that's a good example of behind the For You feed, which is this great engaging thing. There's a really complex set of teams, mostly involving people who are very good at maths and engineering, who build the systems and the, as I say, they're called algorithms that make that For You feed work. And then on the right, you've got the Discover page, which is a list of hashtag challenges within TikTok. And what's interesting about this is that is managed by a set of teams with very different set of skills. So this is managed by what we call our editorial team. So these are people who are looking at TikTok, seeing what is popular, what trends people are enjoying, and helping to put those trends onto this page. And they're also looking at what's happening in the world, whether it's, obviously lockdown was a big thing happening in the world, but like things that are happening in culture, things that are happening on TV, things that are happening in the news. They will put challenges related to those things on this page. So, you've got, as I say, on the left, you've got, in some sense, very technical, quite mathematical skills creating the For You feed, and on the right, you've got much more what we call editorial skills, which are about people seeing and understanding what's happening in TikTok and what's happening in the world and reflecting that on this Discover page. So that's a little bit on TikTok as a bit of an intro. Let's just watch this video. So this is a little trailer video for a feature that we introduced recently, and I wanted to use that as an example just to talk to you about some of the work that our product teams in particular do. So during the coronavirus crisis, we launched a feature which is called a donation sticker. So you might have seen stickers on TikTok, and this is another version of a sticker, but it links directly to a charity. And you can see in that second box, help musicians, British Red Cross, list of charities. So the user or the creator can put that sticker on their video and choose which charity the sticker will connect to, and then when people watch that video, they can click on the sticker and donate money to that charity. So this is a really interesting example, right? Because it brings together the work of lots of different teams. It brings together the work of our policy team. And this is a team that spends a lot of time talking to people and organizations outside of TikTok. So they talk to governments, they talk to charities, they talk to different business partners of TikTok and understand what's going on in the outside world. And so that team was able to say to us, look, you know, that we're all aware of the challenges of the coronavirus. Here's something that TikTok can do to help certain charities in certain areas, which would be really beneficial. And so they talked about that, and our product team, which is the team of people who actually define, like, you know, how does the product work? What kind of features do we want? What sort of stickers? What effects? All the details of exactly how TikTok works, from every detail of like, how do you swipe up? How do you swipe down? How do you comment? Every single detail is managed by what's called the product team. So they define how's it going to work, and then they write a detailed description of what they want. And then there's another team called the engineering team who actually write the code that will make that happen. So the policy team says, okay, we think it would be really great if users could raise money for these charities in areas that are really badly affected by coronavirus. And then the product team comes and says, okay, great, we can create this sticker. And they effectively, you know, sketch out like, how would that work? How does it work in the product? And this explains, you know, the journey of that, of like, how do you actually create a sticker and add it to your video? And then the engineering team goes and writes all the code to make that happen. So that's just one example of, you know, of one sticker. And of course, there are many, many stickers and effects within TikTok. But you've got very different skill sets of people doing that. You've got that policy team who really have to understand what's happening in the outside world, and, you know, where are there communities like musicians? So Help Musicians is one of the charities. Where are there communities, you know, which are really big on TikTok? Music is a huge part of TikTok, so it makes a lot of sense for TikTok to help raise money for musicians who are affected during coronavirus. So they understand what's going on there, and then the product and engineering teams do the more technical work of defining how a sticker like this should work, and then, as I say, writing the code to actually make it happen. Another example is a new feature that we're rolling out, which is going live. So you can see here again some demo screenshots of how do you actually go live. And this is just interesting again because it's about understanding that that product team who is building TikTok is constantly looking at, like, okay, how can we find new features? How can we find new tools to give people to help them be creative and fulfill that kind of creativity and joyfulness goal that I talked about at the beginning? So Live is a great example, and they do lots of prototypes and demos of how going live could work. And they basically try and make it as easy as possible for people to do that. So that you can see here, you just have to go to the plus button, which is opens the recording screen, and then you scroll slightly to the right, and live is selected, and then you can go live. So they've spent a lot of time figuring out what's the way we can make it as easy as possible, as simple as possible for people to go live. And then the interesting thing here is then they will, the product team, once they've defined what they think is the simplest path to people going live, they will often test that with some creators and some users. So they'll create an initial version of this, of how it would work on a sort of private version of TikTok. And then they might show that to some creators and some users in kind of controlled, what we call focus groups, which is like research groups. So small groups where we can show them this and say, does this work? Is this simple? Are there ways we could do this better? So they will get feedback on that, and then they will refine the final design for a new feature like this. And then what they will do is they will talk to another team internally called the marketing team, whose job it is to figure out how do we actually tell people that a new feature like this exists. So some people will find it in the product and it will be easy to see, but some people need need to be shown that this exists. So the marketing team will create videos. They might create adverts to use on the internet, or all over. There's all sorts of different places we can put adverts depending what we're trying to do. But the product team, once they've defined and built that feature, will very often work with the marketing team to say, okay, how do we now tell people about it? And then this is a really interesting example. So talking of the marketing team, one of the things the marketing team does is create adverts for TikTok. And some of those adverts, like the previous screen, are very product focused. It's like this specific product feature, a video or an explanation of how that works. And some of the adverts are much broader, as in helping people understand what TikTok is about. So we have a campaign that is running, an advertising campaign running in the UK at the moment, which is cool, which has the line "a little brighter inside." And so that is about just helping people understand that TikTok is about basically fun and creativity. But what I thought was interesting was to show you the team actually created a video, because normally creating a TV advert and creating those adverts is a very interesting process, which involves working with what we call a creative agency. So that's an external company that specializes in making adverts. And the marketing team will say, okay, this is the kind of message we want to get out there. And the creative agency will say, okay, here's how we should do that. We should make a TV ad, or we should make an ad to use on the internet, or we should make an ad to put on billboards, around cities or whatever. So normally that process works in that way. The agency will come up with some ideas. The marketing team will say, I like this one, I don't like that one. This one works, this one doesn't, and then work together to kind of refine it to get to the final advert. But what's interesting over the last few months, of course, is that everyone was in lockdown, and so the teams, the marketing team and the creative agency partner had to do all of that remotely. And so I'll just play this video, which is kind of fascinating, but I've never done this before, where the teams had to create this whole advert completely remotely using Zoom and video calls. So I'll play the video, which I think is fairly self-explanatory.
We've got to do TikTok. Check this out. 3, 2, 1. Right, quick challenge. How many donuts can you stack on your head?
Oh, I'm saying 7 or 8.
That's jam. That's jam.
4.
Wash my hair, wash my hair.
5.
I can smell vanilla custard.
6.
Ooh.
7.
I can smell raspberries.
So just to stop it there, so all these people around the edge, they are, so in this top left, Stacey, she works in our marketing team, and the others all work for the advertising agency. Zach Ella at the top, he is what's called the director. So he doesn't work directly for the agency, but they employ him for this specific project. So this team kind of comes together for this specific project, and very unusually, they're having to do all of this. They're all obviously at home, dialing in on Zoom.
A.
Hold on. What flavour?
You're waiting.
What?
C.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not gonna lie, I never thought that I would ever shoot a TV ad in my living room.
The shoot was really fun. Never done anything like that from home, like a full-blown shoot with everybody there doing their part.
I was a bit nervous about it because you're like, how is this gonna work? We balanced my laptop on the cat tower so that I could have everyone see me.
Rainbow, then jump, but as you jump you wave it.
it was amazing having no one actually there physically in person, and I'm just having to do everything that they tell me.
Just a note on the loo roll for my OCD, if they're all like evenly spaced.
Oh my god, yeah, we had to like black out the windows, we had to move everything out of this room, and we had to...
They actually sent these to my house. These are not my plants. And they were like, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right.
A bit to your left, bit to your left, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, up. It must have been a bit weird for you because we're all there on mute watching you and you can't hit.
It was like Hunger Games for a DJ set.
Tap, give me a hair.
On mute, Tap.
But good chat.
It's such a good way of working in this, isn't it?
It does feel quite magic, just going from one place to the next.
Some of them involve the animals as well. It's time to get mum on TikTok.
Yeah.
What? You're not too old. There's no age group, honestly.
I have fun with the family doing this. It keeps us all together. Lots of film work and lots of fun.
Bonkers, isn't it? Who shows up to a Zoom meeting wearing a kit?
Well, the next one, should we all wear something?
I love the way everyone's just got this to hand. TikTok videos have been what's getting me through.
What you guys are doing is quite innovative, actually. So to be a part of it, it's pretty exciting.
People are just having fun and having a good time on the platform.
I can go on there and literally laugh my head off. And there you have our frontline leading doctors, nurses, care assistants, and they're dancing to TikTok.
You know, TikTok is going to be one of the biggest things ever. I can feel it.
There's something really satisfying about getting a really good TikTok and people liking it.
It's something that I won't forget, and I'm sure we'll look back on and say, remember that time during quarantine where the show had to go on? And
3, 2, 1, action.
Let's do a Mexican wave.
Thank you so much.
Okay, can I change back into my bottom braces now?
So that just gives you a little bit of a glimpse behind the scenes of making a TV ad, but making it in a very, very unusual way. So obviously, normally all those people would be together in a studio or wherever they were shooting the ad. So that was, it was amazing to see that happening. So I'll stop there. As I say, I wanted to just give you a sense of some of the different teams and skills involved in, particularly in making the products that we make, and also making some of the marketing and communications that we make. There's all sorts of other skills and functions, from legal to technical skills and business analysis. So I think that, if I could leave you with one message before we go to questions, it's to know that within a company like TikTok, there's an incredibly broad range of people and skills, from people who are incredibly good at maths, people who are very, very detail oriented lawyers, people who are highly creative, building marketing campaigns, people who are working with creators to help them succeed on the platform. So there's a really, really broad range, and that's what I wanted to share. So I'm happy to take any questions after that. Happy to talk about any part of TikTok or my role or my career or whatever that you're interested in.
That's great. Thank you so much, Rich. We've had a lot of questions submitted from our audience, which is fantastic. And just to mention to our viewers, we will not be able to get through all of the questions. We've had several hundred submitted, so do bear with us. So I guess just thinking back to you kind of moving to work with TikTok, Rich, Damon is asked, were you expecting TikTok to be so popular?
Well, very interesting question. I think in a way, yes. So the reason I say that is because, having worked at YouTube, when TikTok came along, I could see some things about TikTok that I recognized from YouTube, and that made me think, that made me feel pretty confident that TikTok was going to be very successful. And those things were that TikTok had a really, really great product, just like YouTube did. So it just is a great experience. The product is different to other things. It's really fun and enjoyable. People really like it. They share it with their friends. So the just the core product was really, really great. But then the other thing that TikTok has that YouTube also has and had is it has a core group of creators and users who really like closely think of themselves as TikTokers. It's like a community of people creating content and people watching content who really, closely think of TikTok as a place that they identify with and they kind of love. And that was the same with YouTube. And I think that sense of, an amazing product and a really, a community that really loves, the content and the creators, those two things actually, I think, go an incredible way. So I could see that TikTok had those. So I guess, yeah, and I do think, in a sense, from quite early on, I did feel like it was going to be very successful.
That's great. Thank you so much. And another one of our students here, Imogen, has asked, how has TikTok changed over time or whilst you've been with the organisation?
A lot is the answer. So I've been 10 months and it's changed in a lot of ways. It changes unbelievably quickly. Almost every month, it feels like it's very different. And interestingly, the way we work internally is we work on kind of 2-month cycles. So every 2 months, all the different teams I described will define a set of goals. Like, this is what we're going to focus on, and this is what we're going to achieve in the next 2 months. So you really do see a lot happen in every 2-month period. I'd say one of the biggest changes in the 10 months you can see from the fact that last week, I think it was, last week, we announced a new initiative called Learn on TikTok, which is basically a lot of how-to and life skills and life hacks and learning content on TikTok. And that is something that we've been seeing kind of come through on TikTok over the last 6 months, more maybe. And so we're really starting to get behind that and encouraging that. And some people say to us, okay, but what, TikTok's all about, fun and like, what, why that kind of thing. And I think the reason is that people seem to be really enjoying it, and it seems like there's something about TikTok with the effects and the transitions and the music that makes it really fun for people to share kind of life skills, whether it's cookery or all sorts of different things. So that's a good example, I think, of how the platform is just growing and evolving in terms of more different types of people are using it. And when you get more different types of people using it, you want to have more different types of content that they can use. So that's one example of how it's changed. But there are, every week and every month, there are lots and lots of smaller examples.
That's great, thank you. Quite a popular question here from our students is, where did the name TikTok come from?
Great question. So I asked that to the guy who came up with it, and it was basically one guy, or he was working in a small team with 3 people who were coming up with the idea for TikTok. And they brainstormed a bunch of ideas and came to TikTok because they wanted it to be about it was very short videos. So initially all TikToks were under 15 seconds and under. So there was this sense of like, basically, time being a really key part of what this product was about, as in it was going to be very short videos. That was one of the things that made it very different to other sort of video products and stuff. So he came up with TikTok as a catchy, fun name that also referenced the fact that there was this thing about TikTok, which was it was shorter videos. So that's where it came from. It came from one guy or a small team who were, and they didn't know what TikTok was going to be or how big it was going to be. They were just thinking, okay, what kind of fun, catchy name can we give to a new product which is focused on very, very short videos? So that's where it came from.
That's great, thank you so much. One of our students here has said, obviously TikTok is very attractive for young people of all ages, but what do you do to make sure that students who are too young to access the app, how do you make sure they're not able to access it, basically?
Yeah. That's a really, really important Important question. So we have a big team, which I haven't mentioned yet, but is a very, very important team, and it's called the Trust and Safety team. And that team is responsible for keeping TikTok safe, which means they have what are called moderators, who are people who review videos, not certain videos, and if that video is inappropriate or against our community guidelines, they will remove it from TikTok. And that team also builds technology that can automatically review videos and see if they might contain, content that is not appropriate. But then, so specifically on the, users who are underage. So TikTok is only for people 13 and older, and so there's a couple of things. One, when you register for a TikTok account, you have to say your age. Now, of course, the problem with that is that you can, you can say an age that is older than you are. So, ideally people are honest with that, but if they're not, then that team also will monitor accounts. And if there is an account which is very clearly an account of someone who is underage and purely of that person, then that account will be flagged for review by a team within that trust and safety team, and they will often reach out and say, like, we think this is an account that's under 13, that's not allowed, so this account is gonna has to be sort of suspended. So there's a few ways of monitoring it, both as people join TikTok and also when they're using it.
That's great, thank you so much. And Joseph is interested in how things have changed, I guess, since lockdown started, and has asked, have you felt a significant change in how you work with the company since the pandemic? And how's the company been able to continue developing new features over the lockdown period?
Yeah, a big change. I mean, we went overnight on, I think it was the 12th of March or something like that. We went overnight from all being in the office together to the next day all being at home overnight. Now, the thing I will say is, because TikTok is a global company, like, we do actually very commonly work with colleagues all over the world, in different parts of the world. And so in doing that, you have to use video call, and you have to use email, and you have to use, we have a tool called Lark, which is like a messaging tool. So you actually have to, we had to be very good at, working remotely from some of the people we work with already. And so in a way, I think for a company like TikTok, that shift to working at home overnight was not as difficult perhaps as it could have been. So so we carried on. We obviously now, we use video perhaps for 30% or 50% of our communication before, and now obviously it's 100%. So we're just doing what we were doing before much more. And then how do we develop features and product features? Again, I mean, you saw the video of how the team worked together to make that TV ad, which was incredible. And when we first came up with the idea of we want to do this TV ad, a few of us were like, oh, this is going to be really hard. Like, we can't get together to do this shoot. But it's amazing how people adapt, I think, to just figuring out, okay, well, we can't be together to brainstorm that new product feature like the live donation sticker, but teams just actually do that over video, and they use cloud tools, like equivalent of Google Docs, to build the kind of documents that plan out, like, okay, this is how that would work, and create the very detailed instructions for the engineering team. So the combination of video and then cloud docs that different people can collaborate on no matter where they are means that you actually can do those things incredibly effectively, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. I think the move to kind of perhaps in some ways working more creatively whilst in lockdown is something that a lot of organizations have kind of had to face and develop on, which is really great. Thank you for answering that question. So we've had a lot of questions here. So one is, what is the best thing about working at TikTok, and what is also the worst thing about working at TikTok?
The best thing is the variety of people and kind of things that you have to deal with. So that's what I was trying to get across, of like, you know, in any one of those things, whether it's making a TV ad, making a new feature or product, there are lots of different teams, and for me that's the best thing. You know, you have to understand the way different people think. You have to, you know, communicate and listen with different people who have a different perspective on like what's important. Like, it's really important, you know, the trust and safety team would say, okay, great that we want to launch this donation sticker, but we've got to think about all these issues of making sure it's safe. The legal team would be thinking from a legal point of view. The marketing team would be saying, okay, but we need to make it, you know, simple, and we need to tell people about it. So different people come with all these different perspectives, and for me that's the most interesting and enjoyable thing. It's just like figuring out, you know, how to bring all of those things together to get to one kind of end result that we're aiming for. And the worst thing about working for TikTok, maybe the worst thing is that so many people ask me if I've met, have I met, you know, certain creator, have I met that creator? It's not really the worst thing. It's funny, and I've met some of them, but actually not that many of them, because we've all been at home for the last 3-4 months. So haven't been out meeting any of the creators recently.
Absolutely, I can imagine that would be quite difficult to do right now. So one of our students here has asked, how is TikTok supporting the Black Lives Matter movement? Will it adapt in the future to support the movement as well? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so we have been very, very clear, and we want to support that movement and have been supporting that really strongly. So Black Lives Matter as a hashtag on TikTok has been very big. We've also featured that hashtag on that Discover page that I showed earlier in the presentation. So that's been a top hashtag, I think up until actually a couple of days ago. So it was for around about 3 weeks, and we've been engaging with the Black Lives Matter movement in the US and made donations to a number of the charities in support of racial justice and supporting providing legal support for members of that community. So we've done a few of those things in recent times, but actually what I'm more focused on right now is how do we make sure that what we call diversity and inclusion is completely embedded in our business going forward. And so what that means is we need to have experts in inclusion in different teams. So one good example is we're hiring a lot of people at the moment. And it's very, very important as part of the recruitment process, the hiring process, that we have experts in understanding how to make sure we are being as inclusive as possible in the candidates that get through to interviews, in the way people are interviewed. So, for example, we've just made it compulsory. We've made it compulsory that anybody in the company who is interviewing candidates needs to have completed a training. It's called an unconscious bias training, which is a really great training to help you understand, you know, where your unconscious biases may exist. So that's one small example. There's actually probably 100 examples at this point of ways that we are embedding diversity and inclusion into the way we operate as a company. So as I say, we absolutely want to support the Black Lives Matter movement, and Black creators and the Black community are a really, really big part of TikTok, and that's fantastic. We're incredibly proud of that, and we want to continue to support that. But we also want to build, I think, a longer term, a really long-term way of embedding diversity and inclusion into the company. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Rich. So we have a few questions here. Again, very, very popular. One is from Sarah, who asks, what are TikTok testers?
TikTok testers? I don't know. I don't know where that's come from. I don't know if you can ask Sarah for more information as to what she means, but it's not. That's not a specific team that we have internally. So I'm not quite sure what Sarah means there.
No problem, Sarah. If you have any more info, drop it to us on the Q&A thread and we'll pick that up. Thank you. So Evan is quite interested in how do you develop new stickers and animations and effects? Is there an entire team dedicated to that, and how does that work?
Yeah. So there are basically two teams dedicated to that. So there is, I mentioned, there's a product team. So there are people sitting within the product team, and they're doing everything from building the core TikTok product to there are, I think at this point, 2 or 3 people dedicated to stickers and effects. And then there's another group of people within what we call our content programming team. So they are the people who are programming the hashtag challenges and thinking. And so the way it works is sometimes when the content programming team says, okay, we want to do a hashtag challenge around this, like, there's a hashtag challenge about the return of the Premier League. Or there was last week anyway. They might, along with that, they might say, oh, it would also be cool to do a sticker or an effect. And so they will suggest that to the product team that manages stickers and effects, and either agree that that's a good idea or not. And if they agree it's a good idea, then they'll scope out like what could it be and how could it work. So that's one way it works. The second way is that product team is just constantly trying to think of stickers and effects that will be fun and engaging for people. And it goes back to that thing of like, what we're trying to do is help people be creative and help them have fun. And so they're just constantly brainstorming ideas, as I say, whether it's might be related to what's happening in the outside world or just dreaming up kind of weird and wonderful ideas. And as anyone who's used TikTok can see that, I mean, there's at any one time, there's, I don't know, maybe 100, maybe more stickers and effects in there. And so it's a question of trying to have enough that people have variety to use different stickers, but also keep coming up with new ones so that people can, people don't get bored of the ones that are there. So yeah, there's 2 groups of people who are thinking about that, every day, really.
That's great, thank you. And Lewis is interested in the kind of work that you do as well, but how do you decide which creators you include in different projects? So we saw Gordon Ramsay in one of those, and how does that work?
Great question. So that is a good example where 2 teams work together on that. So the marketing team are trying to figure out, okay, in this, say the project is like a TV ad. In this project, actually, I'll give you another project, which is we did a collaboration with the Brits, the big music awards. And so we did a live stream from the red carpet at the Brits, and we did some advertising around that. And so there's 2 teams there. The marketing team thinking, okay, we want people to understand that there is great music content and music artists on TikTok. And then we have a partnerships team who are focused on talking to music artists and the music industry. And so they work together to say, okay, who would be the best music artists that we could include in this, to put in the live stream and to put in the advertising. And the person they came to at that point was Lewis Capaldi. And they basically decided that Lewis Capaldi is someone who loves TikTok. He naturally uses it and is very, very funny on it. So he kind of is a good person to talk about it because he actually enjoys the product. But he's also very popular, and he's quite popular with quite a broad range of people. So he's not just popular with, like 25-year-olds. He's not just popular with 15-year-olds. So in that instance, that was kind of a question of, okay, what we're trying to do is explain that TikTok has great music content and explain that to quite a broad audience of different ages. So someone like Lewis was a great example to include in that. So that's just for each different project, whether it's advertising or other things, you kind of think, what are we trying to say here? What are we trying to communicate? And if we're trying to say X, which creator or which artist would help us to do that?
That's great, thank you. And just time for one final question here. What is your favorite feature in TikTok?
Great question. So my favorite feature. So I've got 2 cats, and so I've been doing a lot of TikToks of the cats recently. So I love the there's various features of kind of like, there's a smoky effect and a rain effect, which when you put that with the cats with the right soundtrack, just kind of really works. And there's a huge hashtag called Cats of TikTok, which is just hilarious. And so anyway, that's an effect that I've been using a lot recently. But I mean, you know, there's so many. That's the thing I love. Actually, you know, if there's one I love even more than that, it's the fact of being able to put music onto TikToks, you know, which sometimes people overlook as a feature, but you know, that is a really key feature, the fact that we have sounds and music, and I think that, you know, that's just amazing.
Absolutely, that's great. Thank you so much, Rich. And unfortunately, that is all we have time for today.